Welcome to episode 104 of the Lone Hockey Podcast. And today we're going to be talking about some standouts between the Blackhawks and Sabres from last night's game. Buffalo ended up taking away a 4-2 win, and they played a really good game overall. A lot of their key players stood out, and that was really good for them to start the season, potentially build off that heading into the future with obviously their marquee players have to produce and be able to provide essential scoring to get back to playoff form. And so we'll start on Buffalo side. I thought JJ Peterka looked really good this game. He showed some physicality, had some penalties in this game as well. And he was checking well. He was checking really well. The details within his checking were noticeable. I really noticed his offensive flair and shot ability, and that's what really stands out the most when I talk about Peterka and how he's really evolved ever since being drafted to where he is now. That shot threat ability has really transformed and allowed him to be able to legit be a legit NHL scorer and 30 plus goals and somewhere around that mark where he can hit that consistently is something that really can allow him to increase his scoring trajectory moving forward. He's a guy that's really relied upon as that goal scoring threat and a guy who's a really good top six, more of a play driver than ever now. When he started his career in Buffalo, he was more of a complimentary middle six type guy. Now he's really evolved into an actual top six play driver in Buffalo. And so he's been a guy that's been electric, and he's always a guy that stands out every time I watch Buffalo. I really enjoy watching him and want to go further in depth about him in an article or something along those lines. But he's really fun to watch, really exciting to watch. He's still a young player at the same time, which is another key element to why I enjoy watching him so much. But at the same time, playmaking elements still stand out too. He has a really nice playmaking touch to his game, and I believe some of that has to do with his foundation of his play in the DEL. When I watched him in the DEL, a lot of his game was built on playmaking and pass first style, and being able to do that. I feel like now, since he's added more confidence and legitimacy to his shot threat ability, that's allowed him to be a consistent threat when shooting the puck. And but he still has times where he can use his vision and he can use his awareness really well, and he's very poised. He's very aware of all these different sequences around him. He's very aware of where to position himself and where to be active and how to move pucks with pace. And so his playmaking instincts are still noticeable. Tage Thompson, really good game as well. Him and Paterka had the same stat line, a goal, an assist, and 2 points. And Tage Thompson was rolling, shot threat ability, but I noticed a lot of his playmaking in the interior space and his ability to maneuver, his ability to dangle you one on one is really unique for a guy of that stature, that size. And Thompson's a guy who can maneuver and outmaneuver almost anybody. And based on size alone, he's very much a threat. Based on actual ability, he is even bigger of a threat. So he's a guy that stood out all across the board. I really liked him. And two guys we'll get to next that play a very similar style, but I want to talk more about one of them specifically. Peyton Krebs and Beck Malenstein. I want to talk about Malenstein a little bit more. He was really getting around the crease this game. He noticed, and I noticed a lot of his ability to finish around there because he had a goal from inside the crease. And he was very active at being able to get to loose puck opportunities, 50-50s, being able to try and create possession scenarios. A guy who's a bottom six checking for, but again, like I've mentioned in previous episodes, bottom six checkers also have skill to their game nowadays. So a lot of the guys who are just checking for the sake of checking and just physical for the sake of being physical, it's really hard to just do that nowadays. Nowadays, if you have some skill on top of that, you can edge out and be able to outcompete other guys in the bottom six for roster spots if you have skill on top of your checking ability. So think of a team like Colorado where they have a bunch of bottom sixers who are really skilled as well. You can't underestimate that. So Malin Center is essentially that where he's skilled, but he also has the ability to check and be able to forecheck and be able to try and take advantage of loose puck opportunities and work and compete and use grit in his game. And again, Peyton Krebs is similar in that sense. He had an assist in the game where he can compete and he has skill inside that bottom six role, similar to Malenstein. Krebs is more of a center, but Malenstein was good all across the board. He was good in his checking details, and he was able to match up well against some of the Hawks' top scorers as well in terms of line matchups. Ryan McLeod, very similar to the last two guys I mentioned, where he checks, he competes, he has two-way play, he has finishing ability, he has playmaking ability, he has ability to incorporate a sense of grit into his game, and he had a goal in this game as well. Owen Power, I thought he was matched up against Bedard for majority of the game. I thought he really handled him well, and obviously on size alone, Power has a distinct advantage, almost a foot difference. But at the same time, Power is a guy who can use his reach and his range really effectively, and he's very poised when defending. So he doesn't get too easily manipulated by top skilled scorers, and he's able to maintain that poise on line rush scenarios, on transition defense scenarios, defending the blue line, defending entries, those type of settings where he's able to maintain that poise. And so that allowed him to really control pace and be able to downshift the pace of Bedard's game a little bit yesterday. So he did a good job in that sense. And we'll talk about one more, and that is Alex Tuck. Alex Tuck always has speed. You always notice him playing it. It feels like what for him it's a normal gear, but it's always top gear for everybody else. For every other average player, it's top gear that he's playing all the time because he has such a high degree of pace, high degree of skating ability, high degree of stride usage to be able to separate from defenders. His pace is relentless. And he was always competing. He's always activating off the hop. He's always trying to create something. You always notice him in some way, shape, or form, and he's always active all across the board as well. So Alex Tuck was really good. Then we'll get to Chicago's side. Craig Smith first. 2 goals in this game. The only 2 goals for the Hawks. He looked really good as a shot threat player, and obviously earlier in his career, he was a guy who could be relied upon as sort of that top six, top nine type guy who could score and make plays. Mostly, I would say as a goal scorer more than anything else. When he was playing in Nashville, he had a really weapon, like a really big weapon of a shot. When he was playing inside that top six and top nine role for Nashville, even in the playoffs, he was able to dominate in some shifts where he's created the shot. So I'm not surprised that he still has it. Again, he's a bottom six checker, but he has skill and he has flair and he has shot ability. So he stood out. Lucas Reichel, ever since being inserted into the lineup against San Jose, has looked awesome to start the year. And I believe some of it has to do with how San Jose plays their style. And they play an up-tempo system. They like to play transition hockey. So it fits sort of well with how Reichel likes to play the game. Since San Jose is up ice all the time, this can allow Chicago to take advantage in transition offense scenarios. So that's probably why they included Reichel in some sense in the game. But ever since then, he's been good. He had 2 assists in the game, and he looked really good as a playmaker. That's what you're going to notice about him the most is his pass first game, his small area game, and his skill through small areas, his puck handling through small areas, and his puck handling speed. Those different combinations allow him to really control play. He's not a play driver at this level yet. He still needs to learn how to be a play driver. Some of it has to do with ice time. I would imagine if he doesn't have a big season this year, he could very well be in a trade conversation in future seasons because he's getting to the point where you want to see him turn the corner a little bit more, and he hasn't gotten to that point yet. But this season so far, he's been good, and he's been playing in a bottom six role so far. So again, not the most ideal in terms of ice time, but at the same time, he's at least playing. So you're getting to see him get some more reps to start the season, and he's got new numbers, so maybe that helps. I don't know, but in general, he was good. His playmaking, his vision, his awareness in the ozone. I've always noticed his ozone instincts ever since playing with Ice Bar in Berlin in the DEL and playing in the German youth system. Playmaking has always stood out, and he's always had that ability on both big ice sheets and small ice sheets. And speaking of which, speaking of Germans, he was actually playing against his former World Junior line mate, JJ Peterka, in this game where they had that line. I believe it was 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, where they had that line of Stutzla with Peterka and Reichel as their top line. They were just rolling it out all the time, trying to play that line all the time because they didn't really have anybody else. But anyways, besides the point, Reichel's a guy that stands out. You notice him as that playmaker. I want to see him be more of a shot threat. I think that would be really intriguing, especially for pre-scouts. If you can get him to be labeled as a guy that's both a shot threat and a playmaking threat rather than just a playmaking threat, that would be even more ideal for Reichel to build on in terms of his own game. And then in terms of other players, in terms of a few defensemen, because there weren't too many guys that stood out this game. I noticed Bedard a little bit, but I didn't really notice him that much, to be honest, this game. One of the few games you'll rarely notice him. He still has chances, obviously. Like when elite players, they're able to generate in some way, shape, or form. You're not going to fully limit them, but he wasn't fully noticeable. And then we'll get to Nolan Allen. I really like Nolan Allen's game. His two-way play, his steadiness, his ability to defend entries, and brings that poise, that shutdown ability. He has ability. He's not super offensive, but he has the ability to be able to stifle plays and shut plays down. That's what's most reliable in his game. And he drew in that, like I said before, in that game against Utah to start the season. He's been in and out of the lineup a little bit ever since. So he's a guy that stands out as more the depth guy on this team right now, and he's a guy that has played really well when he's played a smaller role. Maybe that's the best for him right now is to ease his way into a top four or a middle pairing type role rather than trying to throw him into the fire and play him there right away unless he adapts really well. So the smaller ice time actually might help him a little bit more in terms of reps and being able to have more energy and efficiency in his game. And he's looked good so far. Similar to him is Connor Murphy, an assist in this game. Connor Murphy, one of the longest tenured Hawks now, with Kane and Taves not there anymore. And Murphy's a guy, I like his shutdown play. I like his physicality. I like how he uses his hands to really get inside the opposing team's hands and also their sticks and trying to limit opponents in that sense with how physical he is and how much pushback he gives on defenders. And just your prototypical shutdown defenseman, not an offensive guy, similar to Allen, not an offensive guy, but shutdown ability is noticeable in that sense as well. Tyler Bertuzzi, I want to talk about him a little bit more. I've liked him a lot, actually. I don't like him on the power play, working the flanks. I feel like you could replace him with Taylor Hall and then put Nick Foligno at the net front in that first unit. I feel like that would be a better option because Taylor Hall's played a little bit more and played a little bit better offensive hockey. And but Bertuzzi, ever since that game against San Jose, that home opening game, he's been good. He's stood out. He's been better, and he's been better offensively more than anything else. That's what you really need out of him. You want to rely on him as a top six winger who can complement not only Bedard but other lines as well, where he can use that top six scoring and that ability. And he's a dual threat player when he's at his best. He can use both and be able to use his checking in tandem with everything else. But he's a guy that stood out yesterday. I noticed him in the ozone. I noticed him in terms of his movement, his off puck play. I noticed him in how he's positioning himself at the net front to try and create rebound opportunities and try pounce on those opportunities when they were presented. And he stood out. Taylor Hall is the last guy I want to talk about. I've liked Taylor Hall actually most of the games this season. There's only a few games I haven't really noticed him that much, but playmaking instincts are there. He looks healthy. He looks like he has rhythm to his game. He looks like he can not necessarily control his own line, but he looks like he can manage his own and handle one-on-one scenarios, especially with physical contact, which is more important. But he's looked good and he's looked like he stood out in terms of playmaking and how he's able to generate offense and the efficiency with how he's able to control playmaking sequences within his game as well.